Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show, The Strategic Money Mindset. I'm your host, Chase, with my co-host, Rob, here. And today we've got a multi-series episode going on. And the first one today is going to be about your taxed money, meaning it is post-taxed and it is non-qualified funds. So you've already paid the taxes on this money, and we're going to show the smart choices with your now money.
That's right. Tax today is what we typically call this when we're planning, meaning that we are going to pay taxes on these dollars in the now. So as we earn interest or make gains on these money and those gains are realized,
Yep.
they get taxed.
Yeah. So most people think it's all about growth. But what if I told you that when you pay taxes on your money could even be more important? So today we're going to break down the taxed today bucket, your most flexible but often most neglected bucket of money.
Yep, from a tax efficiency standpoint.
Absolutely,
sure.
Yeah.
So what is tax today money? This typically includes your bank accounts, savings accounts, CDs, non-qualified brokerage accounts.
Yeah, your individual accounts. Yep.
Your crypto funds can fall into this category as well if you've got non-qualified crypto funds also there. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions there, and what I run across a lot in the planning space is, hey, I've got my money in my savings. This is my, maybe my emergency fund or that easy and readily accessible money there that we need to have. That needs to be a core part of your plan. Needs to be your liquidity. But what is the downstream effect of that once we get taxes in there? And I say, and probably the number one or the top example that I get is, or at least people bring to me is, hey, I've got 20, 30, 50, 10, whatever, $1,000 in a CD at the bank.
Yep.
Getting 4%. I'm getting that 4% or 5% or whatever it may be there is. But I always have to correct them. It's not 4%.
Absolutely.
It's not 5%. It's less than that. And they look at me like, what? Well, that's because that money is taxed because we realize those gains in the now, and we're going to have to pay taxes on that. So at the end of the year, the bank is going to send me a 1099 that says, hey, you earned this interest, and it gets included into my taxable money for the year, and I've got to pay taxes on that. So a great example of that, and I just ran the numbers just to be sure here, is 4%. So that's kind of the going rate right now, high threes, low fours. So I'll take the middle road there at 4%.
Right.
What is my net on that money? Well, from a taxable standpoint, if I'm paying 15% tax, my net is 3.4%. So when I think I'm getting 4, I'm actually only getting 3.4%. But what if my capital gains is 20?
Then you're getting less.
I'm getting less, right? So now I'm down to 3% there. So most people don't think about that. The bank is definitely not going to tell you or expose you to that aspect there as well. So just, you got to be aware of all those things. We're not saying don't go get that. I mean, it's easy money and it may make sense to be there, but just understand that could be an aspect there that we need to consider.
Yeah, and also be aware, that's going to be taxed differently than what you would have in an individual brokerage account. So your CDs, even if if it hasn't matured yet, you're still going to pay taxes on that interest every year.
That's
Whereas if you're in a brokerage account, an individual account, you don't pay taxes unless you realize those unrealized gains.
Yep. So if you've got an investment in a specific stock of some kind, I'll say Tesla's been kind of a popular one lately that everybody seems to be on board with. But if I buy a Tesla stock and I pay $300 for that stock, one share, and that stock gains to $450 a share, when do I pay taxes on that, Chase?
When you sell Tesla.
When I sell Tesla. So if I don't sell Tesla, do I have to pay taxes on that money?
No.
So
because that's called unrealized.
Unrealized gains. So it's almost a tax deferral because I know one day I will. But on the back end of that, what happens if I take a loss on that?
Well, if you take a loss on it and you don't sell it, you're in the red. But if you take a loss on it and you do sell it, then you don't have any tax implications because you lost money on that.
That's right. So, and that's a whole different ballgame there. But again,
we'll cover that too.
But just for a quick example there. So let's talk about the tax today money. Why is it important to have dollars in that space, Chase?
You know, emergency funds, one thing, but it's your most liquid money.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So liquidity is a huge aspect and often one of the most skipped
Yeah.
uh, thoughts in planning, so to speak. And we see
Yeah.
it more times than not.
Yeah, everybody wants that tax deferred dollar,
Mm,
and looking to how can they pay less taxes and less taxes, which is okay, and you need that in your plan. But this bucket is very important, and like you said
absolutely.
earlier, it's the most neglected bucket.
It is. I think when you get into the working world and you get into these careers, and these companies have 401ks and 403bs, and whatever savings platform they may or may not have, that platform gets pushed more times than not. Put
Oh,
as much as you
absolutely.
can in there, put your money away, savings. And we neglect the fact that maybe we don't have what I call that kind of bucket one, or that tax today
Yeah.
bucket really set up for success.
Right.
So I think the last time I looked at it, the national statistic on 401k early withdrawals, meaning that I withdrew my money prior to 59 and a half out of a tax deferred 401k, it was up nearing the
Oh
80%
yeah,
mark.
absolutely.
Which means out of 100 people that are participating in a 401k program between the ages of 18 and 59
Yeah,
in
80 of them
five
are taking that.
months, 59 in 5 months, eight of those individuals are going to access those dollars out of their 401k sometime during their life.
Hmm.
There wasn't any generalization around that. That could be a borrowing out of it, but it's also could be surrendering those dollars out where they're paying penalties
Yeah.
and taxes
Oh
on
yeah.
that money. So, and it 100% of the time comes back to, we did not have that first bucket, or that liquidity
Hmm.
bucket, that non qualified tax today bucket set up appropriately.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And
So
and and one of the biggest things, bringing it back to the capital gains, is that's your most tax advantage bracket right there,
it
because
is
it's going to be completely different than your ordinary income bracket. You got 0, you got 15, and you got 20%. So
capital gain taxes.
yeah, absolutely. So, why not take advantage of that? Because, it's like I said, everyone wants that tax deferred money. They don't want to pay the taxes on it. They want to push that down the road, but you're going to fall into a more favorable tax advantage situation with long-term gains if you do it correctly.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, not to beat the bad aspects up of taxes there, what are some of the advantages of having that bucket set up appropriately, especially long term there?
Oh
Give
yeah.
give us a rundown on a couple aspects that you typically talk to your clients about.
So what I typically go through with my clients, we always want to set up an emergency fund. A lot of people do 3 months, 6 months. It depends on the preference and what people's bills are, et
Hmm.
cetera, their situations. But you always want to have that emergency fund, that liquidity. But when we go into investments, we want to look at having more long-term gains than we do short term, because short term capital gains, you're going to be taxed at your ordinary income rate. Now,
Hmm.
sometimes that's okay, because if people are drawing from the account, they need to have that. And I have clients that do that a lot, where we are setting up monthly withdrawals for them. But some of that is mixed with short term and long term. But the long term capital gains are going to be the most beneficial for you, because it's going to be stacked on top of your ordinary income. It's going to be taxed after that, and it's going to be 0, 15, or 20%. So you're going to be in a much favorable tax position. And so when we go through and invest with clients, we always look at that, and we always let them know, like, hey, this bucket of money right here, it's going to be liquid and you can pull from it whenever you want, but should be the plan for it. We want to be the most tax advantaged with it.
That's correct. Yep. So I know when I'm planning with my clients, most of the time, especially for the emergency funds, it's not us that necessarily we're trying out there and make the most bang for our buck as far
Right.
as growth goes. That money needs to be very stable.
Hmm.
We need to have access to it, and we need to be able to unwind whatever it's in
Yeah.
pretty easily in the event that we need to get to it, quickly,
Yeah.
for whatever there. Most of the time, what I'm trying to do is put them in a platform that allows us to outpace inflation,
Yeah.
which last few years has been a struggle really without getting with the risk adversity side
Yeah.
of that part of the equation. But in the traditional 2 to 2.5% inflationary standpoint, that emergency funds really there for the liquidity piece, and then I don't want to lose the value of that money. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't want to just stick to whatever your number is, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000, $100,000, whatever
Mhm.
your 6 months is. And I'm a
You want to stick it in the mattress
I'm
and
a
just let it
yeah,
sit there.
yeah, 3 to 6 months is where I'm at. You don't want to leave it in the mattress because you are losing value on that dollar
Yeah.
every single day.
Absolutely.
So inflation does not stop; it continues a daily thing, and even though it's minute daily, yearly that adds up. And so my $10,000 that I put under my mattress 20 years ago, I can't go buy near the things that I could 20 years ago
Your
with it, right?
$10,000 is probably more along the lines of maybe
3 or 4. Right.
I was
Yeah. So
yeah.
probably less than half, if I had to guess, with the recent inflation that we've had. So just kind of understanding those aspects, but planning around those things. The remaining part of that money, once I kind of get to that threshold, and we talk about that bucket being bigger at times,
Mhm.
that's the money we can be a little more aggressive with in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
And then I always talk about that play money, right? There's paycheck money and there's play money there. And so those kind of things there's are what we cover. The play money, go play with it. If you want to throw that into
Yeah.
crypto or whatever risky,
That's
the
money that
stocks.
you're okay with losing.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I
not
don't
the
want to say
money.
like you want to just lose it
Mhm.
all, but I mean you can be aggressive with it and be more risky and okay with having some more significant loss in it.
Yep, correct. That's that money is not putting food on my table or
Right.
going to take care of a situation that may arise,
Yeah, that's a
right?
risk
So
and reward investment.
that's absolutely so. We don't want it to go away. Obviously, we want to
Right.
grow it, but at the same time, if something bad happened, it's not the end of the world for us either.
Hmm.
So you'll always have that aspect in there also. Um, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the drawbacks with that, and maybe jump in? So I used some percentages earlier. I know you kind of put some dollars to that. Why don't you
Yeah.
talk about kind of tax drag and long-term effects of that, and what that actually could feel
Yeah.
or look like?
So drawbacks on the tax today bucket is, the annual taxation is tax drag. And what is tax drag? Tax drag is the reduction in your investment growth that's caused by taxes that you have to pay each year on interest, dividends, or capital gains. So even if your investments are performing well, taxes take away a part of your gains, and that's just something that's going to happen in this. So preventing those dollars from compounding is what's happening. And an example of this is going to be on $100,000 investment. So if you're earning 8% annually, but you lose 2% of that to taxes each year, your true growth is only going to be about 6%.
Mhm.
Eight
Yep.
minus two
Yep.
is six. So let's say over a long period of time, the difference compounds extremely huge. This is a 20-year example here on this investment. So the growth scenario, the 8% with no tax drag, the ending value would be 400
On 100,000.
on 100,000. Yeah. I threw that in there earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on a 20-year growth example here, so this is going to be the 8% with no tax drag, the growth scenario, and the ending value. So on the 8% no tax drag, you're looking at roughly $466,000 of growth in the ending value. Now let's flip that over, take away the 2%. Now you're at the 6% with the tax drag. You're looking at $320,000 in the ending value. That's $146,000 difference just from taxes. So
Yeah.
the tax drag is basically, it's putting a brake on your investments.
Yeah, and let's narrow that down a little bit. On a $10,000 investment
Yeah.
over that same 20-year period, that's a $14,000 that I didn't make.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't add in. So that 10,000 turns into 46,000
Yep.
and some change. And with a 2% tax drag on that, I'm down at 32,000.
Yeah.
So could be a $14,000 difference there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Well, Chase, not digging in too deep on this, but what are some of the buy and selling triggers that you typically look at when you're working with clients, and maybe we do have a non-qualified brokerage account set aside, and we've got the emergency money taken care of, and hey, I want to do a little more investing, outside of the 401k, so to speak,
Oh
or
yeah.
the IRA. What when you start working with a client and hey, we're going to see some taxes because we're going to go,
Mm-hmm.
be a little more aggressive with this
Yep.
money. What are some of the triggers you look at when you're recommending changes in different investment opportunities there?
Yeah. So a lot of what we look for, this past, April of 2025 was a really great example for this. This is where we do, tax loss harvesting.
Yep.
Which is really going to save people because the positions that are at a loss, you can sell those and then sell a position that's at a gain to minimize some of those capital gains, and you're at a neutral. So you're at it's a wash right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So get rid of some of the bad
Yeah,
investments and take advantage of the good ones.
take advantage of the good ones. So, and then what we do for that, so definitely the selling triggers, or is especially with the non-qualified funds, we watch those investments regularly, and we watch the market regularly. And just like I said, in April of 2025, the market was down roughly 10%. Was a great time to sell some positions at a loss, sell and offset some of the winners. So move that money to cash, and then continue to watch. And as we feel that the markets kind of hit its low, then it's a Black Friday sale. You buy in when it's low, and then that market kicks back up, and guess what? You've regained all of what you've lost and then some. So that's how we really do that, and that's the tax loss harvesting right there. And it is something that if your advisor is not doing that for you, he's really doing you a disservice.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of that, even digging in on the tax piece there, some of that harvesting could even create some carryovers and some of that into future tax years as well. So that's always an aspect there. So make sure when you're working with your advisor, whether that's us or someone else,
Right.
and they're recommending taking some of these losses to offset some gains there, or just recommending selling and buying. Understand there's going to be tax consequences with any of this money in this non-qualified bucket here.
Yeah.
And understand your short-term and long-term tax effects that it may or may not create.
That's really huge, because a lot of people don't understand the difference between long-term and short-term capital gains.
Yep. So absolutely.
Yeah. But again, let's let the dividends and the interest added taxable income. So no matter what, if you're in a position that does pay dividends and gives you interest, you're going to have to pay taxes on those dividends, because that's going to be considered income right there. So that's one caveat. So if you're looking if you're looking to get into some blue chip stocks that pay some really good dividends and have the advantage to possibly gain more dividends, you're going to be paying
on those dividends,
because right. That's going to be income right there.
Yep. So going back to the bucket strategy here, or that thought process there, the category, whatever, the tax today. I think one of the biggest things that I like to see in there is really setting that structure up. I would say 75% of the clients I sit down are not appropriately funded in that category.
I agree 100%.
And so, start early. If you're not currently working with an advisor, if they're not walking you through those aspects and saying, hey, how much liquidity should I have in my plan? You need to be having those conversations.
Yeah.
I'm a 3 to 6 month income.
Yeah.
I want to see if you're still working, you're in your working career. I like to see 3 to 6 months of income in place.
Absolutely.
And that's typically a pretty sufficient amount. Some people like to have 9 months to a year in there. I'm okay with that. That's perfectly fine. Your goal is your goal. Everybody's a little different. My recommendation is at least 3 to 6 months. If you want more, we'll build a plan around that.
Yeah.
And make sure you're there. I think COVID was a big wake up call for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You kind of saw I won't say mass layoffs, but a lot of people weren't
Yeah,
going to
it
work,
was
right?
furloughs, mass layoffs.
Furloughs,
Absolutely.
people weren't showing up, having to show up at the office,
Hmm.
weren't maybe getting those full-time hours again, so they were having to supplement, right?
Right.
Now, I will say the federal government stepped in and said, hey, you can take a one-time distribution from your 401k with no penalties. You're going to have to pay taxes on the money, but if you need some money, you can do that. And that was very nice of
That was,
them.
yeah, that was extremely nice, but it was a one-time
One-time
thing.
event, right? And so that may not happen the next time. And so it was
Hopefully, there's not a next
eye-opening.
time.
Oh yeah, me too. I agree. But those type of events are not always promised to us, and so it's very important that you are planning around those things. Where the money's actually invested at, we can help you with that. I don't get too hung up on it. And again, especially when we're just talking about kind of the emergency funds, our goal there is not to go, that's not the money we want to be risky with. So
Yeah.
if we can get it into something that's outpacing the inflation number somewhat, or at least keeping pace with it, I'm typically happy with that. And
Yeah.
I think most of my clients are when they understand the aspect.
Right.
We've got all these other resources that we can go do and be a little more risky with, or I'm gonna say, crazy risky, but where we're in those growth models and we're trying to grow that money is not always the money we want to go get crazy with.
No.
And
Yeah.
so, I keep kind of coming back to that a little bit, but at the same time, we want to be tax efficient with that money. And so,
Hmm.
when people come in, they're like, "Oh, I got an emergency fund. I've got it in CDs. They're paying me 3%. They're paying me, and
Well, ones that
I'll go
mature.
back there 8 or 9 years ago. We're getting 1.5%.
Yeah, but if you're stuck in a CD, if you pull
You're
it out before maturity, you pay a penalty.
Yeah, you're paying penalty. So there's the unwinding cost of that. But also, if we go back 7 or 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
right? CDs have not been great.
No.
1, 2% at the top level if you're depending how long you're going to leave it in there.
Yeah, it was really
Well,
after COVID that CD rates started to
well,
jump.
yeah, because they had to
They
because
had to. Yeah.
inflation shot up, and so that was where the rate push that happened
Absolutely.
and blew up.
Hmm.
And so I would use my personal life. I'll go back to my grandfather. Back in the '80s, I was blessed to live next door to them. So I'm blessed most of the time. Some days
It's family.
he would wake me up on during a weekday during the summer and want me to go to the bank with him for half the day. I didn't love that, but at the time, anyways. But looking back, hey, it molded me into kind of this career here, and I can get to
Hmm.
use these examples. But I vividly remember walking into the bank with him as a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year old and looking at the blackboard with the white letters,
Oh,
right?
yep.
And so, in my hometown, we really had 3 or 4 banks, 3 kind of bigger
The
banks,
chalkboard.
the chalkboard, right? But they would have the blackboard with the little white letters up there. I do remember seeing those rates being 6.7, 9,
Hmm.
12% at times, depending on the time, the length of time you're going to leave it in there. And he would go in, he would put his CDs in or had one mature. Hey, come down to the bank with me. I'm trying to teach you something here. And I'd go down there and we would go to bank one, see what the rates were. He'd get a lot of times we went to the bank where the CD matured.
Yeah.
We would get the check, right? They'd give him a cashier's check for the money. He would walk out of that bank. We'd get in his, he had an El Camino back then, which I would love to still have, but we don't. Take the El Camino down to the next bank down the road, literally walk in the lobby, look at the rates, go back and get an El Camino and drive to the third bank. And it always felt like we always ended back up at the first bank. I don't know why it always felt like that, but it did. And we would go back in there and then spend the time
Let
going
me
through the
ask.
paperwork.
You had phones then, right?
No, we did not. We had phones, but we didn't have cell phones. But
Well, you call from the house and be
I
like,
know. What are your
"What's
rates?
that?
What are your rates?
What are
Right.
your rates?"
So, but nah, it was more the experience
I
for
know. I'm
the
just messing
driving
with you.
through town there. So, but along with another 10 stops that we had to go do or
Hey, it's
errands.
bonding time, but that's
So
that's really funny because you know rates on CDs were so much higher then, and
mhm.
and
It
and
was a different time,
it's
different type of investing,
complete
right?
different type of investing.
So if you want to be studious, go back, read the ERISA Act of the late 1970s,
Hmm.
read the deregulation around some of that in the 401ks and that push during the Reagan years, the
Yeah,
early
absolutely.
early mid 80s. and then watch what happened after that as the change led into the 90s, got into the early 2000s, 9/11, all that stuff really changed the landscape for CDs and
Yeah.
rates and all that stuff. And I would say kind of hurt us younger generations, the Gen Xers and Yers and millennials and all that
Oh
are
yeah,
coming up behind us.
it definitely, because those
Um,
rates just dropped.
that's right. We don't have that security that they had. And
Yeah.
so, use the old Monte Carlo approach of living off the 6%, some
Mm-hmm.
of those things. That's not a recommended number these
Yeah.
days,
No.
right? We're
No.
down in the 4%. The bulletproof number, I think, is less than 2.8% right now.
Yeah.
So,
But again, like you said,
withdrawal
you're
rate,
not
that
really
is.
getting what that rate is.
Yeah, you're not. And so, but yeah, and if you're just looking at CDs there, again, start adding in the tax component
Mm-hmm.
of that, you're not. And
Yeah.
so, that's a short-term capital gain most years on that. If you're, putting it in short-term, 6
Well,
month, 8 month,
unfortunately, it is.
1 year.
It's always going to be short term because
Yep.
you're paying taxes on it every
Well,
single.
true there too. So yeah, because you're realizing those gains. So
Yeah.
you're correct.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, but I mean, great story there. I mean,
Yeah.
really kind of lights it up and like shows the difference in the times and how things have absolutely changed.
Yeah, I use it a lot, and I tell that story quite a bit. And so if you come on as a client with us, you may hear it again. But it is a great example of where we're at in time and space, and it's just shows the changes that can happen in 20, 30 year period here.
I mean, there's a lot happening right now. There's so many changes that are happening. Tariffs, Fed rate cuts, still trying to get that down.
We're at $38 trillion of debt now.
I know.
So
I know.
We've got an administration in here that says, "Hey, we're going to reduce debt."
Mm-hmm.
We've done nothing but add to it.
I know.
And I think there's some good things in play here.
Yeah.
And, but it's got to get applied as well.
Yeah.
And
application is the biggest part. Words are one thing. Actions are bigger.
I agree there. And so,
not to get on that tangent.
Not to get on that tangent or that political stump, so to speak, but
it affects everybody.
The biggest thing there is we don't control that. That is outside of my control, Chase's control, your control. And so we've got to plan with those long-term thoughts and process. So using those stories like I just told, it shows the changes. And so, I hope I live another 30 years.
I mean, the biggest
or more really, but I'm bumping 50 now. And
I think you got another like 10 in it. No,
I'm just kidding. So, but what else is going to change in that time, right? And so, we've got a plan. I don't want to be negative Nancy as far as planning goes, but having those safety nets and those safeguards in place and building a plan nimble enough that we can make those adjustments along the way is very, very important.
So, I mean, the biggest thing is you have to have a strategy. You have to have a strategy. So use this bucket for access, emergencies, and early retirement before 59 and a half, because this money is liquid and you're not going to have penalties and you're not going to pay it on, unless it's short term, you most likely fall into that more favorable tax category. So pair with strategic tax planning to reduce your tax drag. And that's huge. You want to be tax efficient. So be strategic with your money.
Absolutely. So, Chase, we covered quite a bit there. Chased some rabbits. We probably shouldn't have, but all good stuff. We get passionate about these things, and so when we're sitting down with our clients, we pour that passion into each and every person's plan. Everybody's different. Nobody's ever cookie cutter that walks into this office, and so. It's just building and educating the client, and then building those strategies and using them and applying them, and then keeping everybody on track. I think that's the hardest part, just kind of keeping the plan moving forward and on track there. So
So I mean, one thing I will say to just kind of close it up. So if you're saving but not paying attention to what taxes are doing to your returns, you might be losing money without even realizing it. So come to us. Let's take a look. Let's review how your money is being taxed, and let's really go over that to be strategic.
Absolutely. So, what's our next topic?
So next topic is, like I said, it's going to be a multi series episodes here. So we're going to go into the taxed tomorrow bucket.
Tax tomorrow,
Yeah.
tax deferred.
Yeah, I think everyone gets an idea of that. That's qualified pre-taxed money.
That's great.
Yeah. So until next time, y'all, stay tuned and look forward to getting some education to you.
Absolutely. So stay strategic.
Stay strategic. Take care.
Right.